This guy has been inspected and approved by Luminous.
Hey guys, this is SUNSfan and welcome to the official Dota Cinema Guide to Shadow Demon. If you aren't familiar with this hero, you may want to watch the introduction we did for him at the corresponding link. Shadow Demon is an intelligence hero who can be extremely strong as a solo mid-ganker or simply built as a helpful support. He is very useful throughout the game with a nice mix of early game pressure being mixed with great scaling abilities overall. Skill build. Even though there's a cookie-cutter build for Shadow Demon, there does lie a second build for certain occasions. We'll start with the standard, which is getting one level of disruption right away, and then ignoring it until all of your other skills are maxed. The reason for this is first and foremost, it's a great getaway mechanism as you can not only use it on enemies, but can also use it on yourself in order to disjoint spells. This scales really well into late game because of the fact your enemies are going to be stronger, and thus the illusions will be stronger as well. At levels 2, 3, 5, and 7, you'll want to max Shadow Poison. This is a great skill in the early to mid laning stages as you can force your enemies off of the creep wave since it's relatively easy to hit. At levels 4 and of course 8 through 10, you'll want to get Soul Catcher. This is another ability that scales extremely well throughout the game. Pick up your Demonic Purge at the standard levels 6, 11, and 16. The second build we'll talk about is if you're in a dual or tri-lane. You will essentially ignore Shadow Poison for the majority of the game, getting stats to help you survive in most cases. Because of this choice, you'll obviously be maxing Disruption and Soul Catcher first, which in combination will net some very easy kills in your lane. So generally speaking, if you're solo mid, go for the more standard build. If you're in a dual or tri-lane, at least think about the second skill set and see if it's appropriate or not. Item build. For the beginning of the game, get your basic regeneration and branches as per norm. If you're going mid-solo, you can get part of your urn if you'd like it, but if you're playing support, then sorry, but you're going to have to be the one buying either wards or the courier. All boot choices are pretty good for Shadow Demon, but it really depends on what your team needs. If you need some extra stats, then go for treads. If your team needs somebody to pick up arcane boots, then be their man. And phase boots aren't the most common on Shadow Demon, but could still be very useful based on the fact that he's a great ganker already. Like we stated earlier, in the early stages, finishing an urn whether you're a solo mid or not is a great idea. If solo though, then getting a bottle first is preferable since you can start ganking after you've bottled a rune. If on a support, then it doesn't get too exciting. Just make sure wards are up on a constant basis. The only true core item on Shadow Demon would probably be a Force Staff, since its uses are endless and the name of the game for Shadow Demon is being a ganking utility hero. Past that, your item choices are wide open. General support items such as Yules, Orchid, or Mech would be just fine to pick up as well. If you feel the need for more stats-based items, then Drums, in addition to your already built urn, could be for a nice combination. And although this isn't an item the pros pick up, a Dagon can be really nasty for pub stomping. If you land your Soul Catcher, then the enemy will essentially take 50% more damage from your Dagon. In late game, get a Scythe of Vice, or any other items mentioned previously. As you've probably noticed, there isn't exactly a be-all, end-all item pickup for Shadow Demon. Gameplay. In the laning stages, if you focused on skilling Shadow Poison, then be sure to use it as much as possible. Stacking this 4 or more times on an enemy can turn into the easiest first blood of your life. Also, Disruption really doesn't do much damage early, so if you can handle it, use the illusions to block your enemy, especially if you're using it to start a gank. As far as similarities with other heroes, Shadow Demon plays a lot like Ancient Apparition in the fact that, like we've stated numerous times, he can be played as the dominant mid-solo or just a support. If you're playing solo mid, then it's important you become very active in the ganking scene. Your ultimate has a very short cooldown, and this can generally mean a successful kill every time you use it. And as you may or may not know from other ganking heroes, TPs and smokes are really helpful for bypassing wards, so use them. And although he has his uses late game, Shadow Demon is still more effective in ganking than in teamfights because of his nature to focus on single enemies. So it's really important to get off effective ganks so that you can get a solid experience and gold advantage. If you're running around with your team trying to initiate a fight, don't be afraid to use your Shadow Poison to give some vision around corners. Having vision is game breaking, so don't take this ability for granted. Also remember that even though it takes a few stacks to deal some serious damage, if you hit it just once, it will still deal some damage, which can be crucial if you catch an enemy with a Blink Dagger. The low cooldown of Shadow Poison, coupled with the fact that it has some insane range, will make this a lot easier to accomplish. During a teamfight, disruption should be used on a strong enemy in order to give them a taste of their own medicine. Remember that illusions copy things such as radiance, so canceling something like this out could potentially be huge. Of course, if no situation like this arises, you could just use it on your own carry in order to deal that much more damage. And as always, don't forget that this can also be used defensively. But during any fight, it's important that you place a good soul catcher. As you know, it will take a random target within that AoE, so just position your cursor in a way that makes it less random, such as catching the enemy with just the outer ring of the circle. Communicate this with your team so that they're prepared to onslaught whichever enemy is on your radar. And then your ultimate, Demonic Purge, is also an ability you shouldn't just put on anyone. The slow and damage are very helpful, but remember it not only purges off their positive buffs, but any negative buffs they may have as well. So in other words, don't use it on anyone that's hexed or stunned, otherwise your team will most likely rage at you. If the fight is successful, then try using Disruption a bit more in order to push down the lanes. Friends and foes. Shadow Demon loves all carries, even if they're on the other team. As you've probably already guessed, the reason for this is because he can create 2 illusions of them on a pretty regular basis. Is there any other explanation needed? Examples of some very special heroes he loves to copy would be Anti-Mage, Void, Skeleton King, and Dragon Knight. Heroes that Shadow Demon doesn't particularly like are those with burst damage or silencing heroes, but that's pretty standard for any squishy intelligence hero. The hero that Shadow Demon must look out for the most is himself. The reason he's his own worst enemy is because he really needs to get off to a good start, because if he falls behind early it will be very difficult to bounce back. Thanks for watching guys, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube. Also, a special shout out goes to FlawlezZ and Luminous for their help in writing this guide. You can check them out at their respective YouTube channels, which are linked in the video description. And finally, be sure to check out our new website at dotacinema.com, where you can